really fun thing that you can learn to do with your blues, first of all, is play it on an acoustic guitar. And second of all, is learn how to embellish using the scales that you already know within your playing. So let's say, for instance, we're going to play blues in the key of G. So we're going to be using G major, C major, and D major. Okay? But instead of just playing G major and C major and D major, we're going to turn those into 7th chords. Okay, so I'm going to take my G, take my pinky off. There I got myself a G7 chord. I can go down to the C chord here and play the A7 shape. Right? So I've got my first finger barring over everybody, the bottom 5 there. Got my 3rd finger on the 4th string, 5th fret, and I got my pinky on the 2nd string, 5th fret. And then I could take D and play the same thing, D7. Okay? So that's the first step. But what we're going to do is we're going to do 2 things with this. We're going to convert some of these chords into something a little more interesting, and we're going to embellish along those chords as well. Just have some fun with this, right? So the first thing we're going to do here is let's just take this G chord. We're going to build our chord. So we have G7. Okay, now again, you can strum the whole time. You can lift your fingers to create some space. Okay, I like to use the kick and snare ideas that I teach often, where you kind of separate the thicker strings from the thinner strings. Okay, so that idea over the G7. Then what we're going to do is we're going to go to the C7, but instead of actually playing it as C7, what we're going to do is we're going to convert that into a C9 chord to make it sound a little bit more interesting, a little bit more colorful. Okay, so right here what we've got is my middle finger is going to be on the 3rd fret of the 5th string. My first finger is going to be on the 2nd fret of the 4th string. My 3rd finger is going to be on the 3rd fret of the 3rd string. And my pinky is going to go on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. And I just want to strum those 4 strings. So I'm going to deaden out this string with my first finger. I'm going to kind of touch it so it dies there. And I'm deadening out the 6th string with the tip of my middle finger there. And it just adds some spice into the chord that I'm playing. Okay, so I have G7. Okay, and then I'm going to go back to my G7. Okay, now here comes the 5 chord. Now I've got a D7 that I can play, which is fine. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to play my D chord like this. And it's going to be a D7, but it's going to sound a little bit different. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm putting my 3rd finger on the 5th fret of the 5th string. I'm putting my ring finger on the 4th fret of the 4th string. I'm putting my pinky on the 5th fret of the 3rd string. And then I'm putting my first finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. Okay, so I'm just creating a chord here using a 7th in there. But again, it doesn't sound so high up there. It kind of stays within the context of the tonality of my other 2 chords. So I'm deadening out this first string here with the index finger, and I'm deadening out the 6th string with the tip of my ring finger like I normally do. Okay, so here's what we got so far. Follow along, play along with me if you're ready. You know, you can watch this video as much as you need to, but let's have some fun with this blues, okay? So here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, and... Here comes our 4 chord, so we're going to go to that C9. Back to the G. Okay, now, we got to get to that 5 chord. We're going to that D7 there. Then we're going to go back to the 4 chord. Then back to the 1 chord. Okay, now at most blues, you're going to turn around at the very end and you're going to head back to the 5 chord to kind of wrap things up. Now, instead of going back to this D7 shape like this, as my last chord, which would work perfectly fine, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a D sharp 9 chord. Okay, just to change up the tonality again to make it a little more interesting. So now what I'm doing is the same shape that I did on the C9. Right here, I'm moving up to D, but I'm going to take my pinky and kick it out 1 fret. And Again, deadening the first string, deadening the sixth string. So that's what I'm going to go to at the very end, the very end of the turnaround of this song or this blues, okay? So I'm just going to tag that. So I want you to watch this very carefully, and then we're going to play together, okay? So I've got G7. Tempo doesn't matter. We can play it anywhere. Okay, here comes that C9. Back to the G7. Now D7 right here. C9, G7. Then right there I'm going to that D with the sharp 9 right here. Again, I wouldn't have to. It just sounds kind of cool to me. Okay, so step number 1 is let's learn how to play that 12-bar blues progression together with those chord shapes, okay? And again, you can pause this anytime you need to practice this. And then step 2, we're going to embellish it a little bit, and then step 3, we're going to start adding in some notes, okay? So step 1, play this together. This is your goal, okay, is to be able to play this 12-bar blues right here, okay? If you need to slow it down, it's perfectly fine. I'll slow it down a little bit as well so we can play along together. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, and... Okay, here comes that C9, so here I go. Back to the G7. Okay, here comes that D7 right here. To the C9, to the G7, then up to the D9, D sharp 9. Play along with me. Let's have some fun with this. Here we go. Back to the G7. Okay. Here comes that D sharp 9. Okay? So that's step number 1. Is develop that. And even if you only did that, it's going to sound a lot more fun than just playing open chords or 7th chords or something like that, because there's some tonal color going on in there. Right? Your chords are changing color a little bit, which makes it sound a little more interesting. Okay? Now, let's start doing some really simple things like adding in some chordal chromatics. Okay? Now, let me show you what I mean. I'm going to play the same thing again, only this time what I'm going to do is just add in some subtle chromatic movements, and they don't always have to be chromatic. Chromatic just means half steps, right? So that's how I'm using it anyway. So here we go. So I have this. Now watch this. See how I just dropped back 1 fret? Okay? And there's no rhyme or reason to this. It doesn't have to be in any particular place, although I am going to start using them so you can learn from, but you can add these in anywhere you want. So here we go. Okay, so that's how you could add that into the 1 chord. Now, the 4 chord could do the same thing. Watch this. So you see, I can move. What I'm doing right now is I'm just sliding a half step up or a half step down even. Sounds cool too. Okay. Now, again, it's going to depend on the 2 things I'm going to be thinking about here is, number 1, I don't want to do this all the time on every chord in the same place, right? And number 2, I want to make sure that it doesn't get way too busy, okay? So if I'm doing it a lot, like on everything, you know, it might get to be too much, but it's entirely up to you. So let me add some of that in a little bit and kind of show you what I'm doing. So 1, 2, 3, 4. See that? Now I went. Okay, now we could use all kinds of stuff like this. So again, bear with me here. I'm just giving you some ideas. So I've got 2 new ideas here. I've got my half step 1, right? Now here's another one. And again, it doesn't matter where I add it in. how many different ways I can use this? Literally anywhere rhythmically. There's no right or wrong place to put this. It's where it feels most comfortable for you, okay? Then you got your C9 chord here. Now, you don't have as much room to work with here. If we were in a different key, you'd have more space to move. Because I'm in C, you know, I'm not going to go like this off the guitar and then try and work this. I'm just going to use the half step. But I could use the one above it too, right? So I have, now listen to how cool this sounds now. Now again, that might be a little much, but I'm just showing you how it works. Now here comes the 5 chord. Now because I don't have a lot of time in there, I'm not going to do some slides there just because I'm moving pretty quick. I certainly could, you know, I could... See, I went from the 5, back a half step, then to the C9 like that. Or I could have done this. I could have stayed on 5 and just kept that shape and moved down. Because I don't have to go to a C9. I could go to the C7 like this, too. Pretty cool, huh? So I could go... Okay, so already you'll notice with the combination of changing my chords, needless to say, using some rhythm in there, right? Not just using the same pattern over and over and over. And using this sliding technique. And it's going to take a little bit, like when I'm playing for you right now, I don't have any one particular place I'm sliding. I'm just adding it in as an embellishment, and that's what I want you to understand, okay? You don't have to feel like you have to slide every time on every chord in every position and do downs and ups and, you know, slide up and slide down. And you don't have to do all of that, okay? The trick is to try and sell, you know, the blues element with some fun in between to make it sound interesting to your listener. So your listener listens and goes, oh yeah, it's way more interesting than just going... You know what I mean? So you're just adding some subtlety in there. You're adding some rhythm and you're adding some half step or more. You see? So it's pretty cool. Now, a really traditional thing to add at the end is this, that little tag. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm going from my C9 up to my E9. Now again, I can kick that pinky out if I have time. If I don't, I can just leave it as a D9. But it's a chromatic run from your 4 to your 5. So you're coming off the very end of your blues, you're going, sorry. Right here. So you could do it either way. You could do it as a sharp 9, or just a 9, or kick your pinky out at the end. Okay? The thing I need you to understand about this is when it comes to real authentic creation of music, certainly in the blues genre, it's not about exactness. It's not about that, you know, you have to use the sharp 9 or you can't use it here, but you can use it here. It's all about tonality. Now, if I was sitting on this 4 chord, I like the sound of the 9th chord more sitting on the 4 chord. Instead of, it sounds a little bit aggressive to me. So I like just the sound of the 9th. But at the end, the chord is just a passing chord to get me to the E sharp 9, or the D sharp 9, excuse me. So it's okay that it's a sharp 9 right there, because I'm not accenting that chord anyway. It's just used as kind of a passing chord to get me up here, or vice versa. If I use it as just a 9, and I'm just using the 9th instead of the sharp 9, that's okay too. It's a difference in color. So you can see how all of a sudden when you start thinking about playing like this, And again, you have forever to learn how to do this. You don't have to learn this in a day or 2 days or do exactly what I'm doing. The goal is to just start by thinking step 1 is I have a 12-bar blues. Step 2 is I'm playing them as bar chords, right? Step 3, I'm turning them into 7th chords. Step 4, I'm looking for options other than 7th chords. I can play this as a 9th, or I can play the D as a 7th like this, or I can play the C as a 7th like this. There's a lot of different things that you can do. So you could start with my idea and then embellish on your own. Okay, next step, we start adding in some half step or more slide movements because it just makes it sound a little bit more interesting. We don't have to do it all the time. We don't have to overdo it, but it sounds pretty darn cool. Okay? Now the next step is that you can start utilizing notes of your G minor pentatonic scale and your G major pentatonic scale. And let me just show you again just a little bit of this. So if I have G minor pentatonic, what I'm really concerned with is this, and this. Those are the ones I'm really looking for. Especially this and this. Those two guys. Okay, if I was playing major pentatonic, I would get this note, okay, which we already have, okay, it's right there, and then this note and this note. So we have those 2 5s right there. And we have these 2 6s in the minor side. Those are major, and these are minor. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to use these 2 5s and these 2 6s to embellish in our chord. Now you could use those any way you want to. Okay? Any way you want to. You can use them a little, you can use them a lot, you can use them in any order. See, the G really has a lot of space to get creative with those 4 notes right there. I wouldn't try and do all that. Just add it in once in a while. You know, don't overdo it like that. Just kind of throw it in once in a while. Now, when I go to this chord, I'm not going to do all that because my fingers are already full. So that's maybe where I use a little more slidey ideas, right? And then I go back. Now here, my fingers are full. But I could have some fun with the sliding. Now here's that. Okay, so over that G, it's really awesome to be able to add in these 2 6s or these 2 5s. Of course, we're in G. We could do this anywhere, but okay. And another one that you can add in that's pretty darn cool, but it's a little bit harder to do, is to take your middle finger off the guitar and do a hammer-on from the 3 to the 4 there. So you could be going... But it sounds so bluesy, and it sounds so freaking cool to go... Okay, so that's another really neat idea that you can add into this as well, is just throwing that in there, that little hammer-on over your chord. So again, what's nice about this is you don't have to get all perfect on trying to hit the right... like pick all the strings in between. You can just kind of strum and add and remove those. Now it's going to take a little time to get comfortable with it, and again, that's what this journey is all about. It's not replicating somebody's playing exactly, it's the premise, the idea. Okay? And again, I'm going to encourage you to practice this, and I'm going to encourage you to try and post a video on, for instance, the Facebook community page to if you're not already familiar, go to Facebook, look up GuitarZoom community, and post a video of you practicing this. This is a great idea, okay? There's a lot of really fun stuff that you can do with this thing. So don't worry like you got to overdo it or anything like that. Just explore these ideas and see what you can come up with.